Podcast, a podcast about classical education, the classical world, and the stuff you should know about it. It's the stuff I wish I knew when I was in school.
Seriously.
And it's the stuff that I'm just wrapping my hands around now. I am Graham Donaldson. I'm one of your podcast hosts and teacher of English literature at Veritas Academy. I'm here with AJ Hannenberg.
Hello, hello.
And Thomas Magby.
Hey.
The Dean of Student Life.
Himself.
Yeah, we don't have cool titles. Just instructor, it says at the bottom of my email.
Rhetoric teacher, instructor.
Yeah.
Dean of Student Life is pretty good. So last time we were here, we were talking about logical fallacies, and we got through all of the fallacies of distraction. We, in our arrogance and in our hubris, we thought we could get through all of the logical fallacies, realized we could not. But we're going to take up the task again and go for part 2 and go through the various logical fallacies. So if you are just listening to this podcast, and this is your first Classical Stuff You Should Know podcast ever, you may want to at least go back to episode 13, I think it is, and listen to the first half of Logical Fallacies, because this is episode 14, Logical Fallacies Part 2. What would be like a good sequel name for a sequel movie, like Logical Fallacies?
Too Fast, Too Furious.
Too Fallacied.
Yep. Hannenberg is thinking about it clearly very
really hard. I'm really
thinking
trying
about
to
it
think
right
something
now.
Like
good.
thinking about duo, thinking about
Some play on the word fall. And fallacy. I got nothing yet, but it'll come. It'll happen.
Somewhere halfway through the podcast, we'll just blurt it out. Okay, fallacies of ambiguity. So Hannenberg, what do we got?
Yeah, so fallacies of distraction are ones that attempt to solve the argument by really avoiding the argument altogether. Fallacies of ambiguity are such that there's something confusing happening within the argument itself. Some sort of thing that's changing from one thing to another, or it's just the argument's not put together in a way that is clear and moves logically from premises to conclusions. The first fallacy we will talk about is equivocation. And that's where a word switches from meaning one thing at the beginning of an argument to meaning a different thing at the end of the argument. And the most common example I've seen for this one is all men are rational animals. Women are not men. Therefore, women are not rational animals, right? And in that example, the definition of man is changing from meaning humanity to males, right? Males of the species. So that's equivocation, where a word sort of swaps definitions in the middle of things. And I've been guilty of this one myself.
Yeah, we see equivocation a lot. I try to point it out when we come to it in literature. There's in Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, there is a part where the lady is coming to the knight and saying like, Christian knight, huh? I hear you guys are all about love. And what she means is charity. Yeah. Sacrificing yourself for the poor and the downtrodden and those who cannot pay you back. And she says, so I hear you're all about love. Why don't you teach me about some of that love? And she ain't talking about charity, right? So,
well,
what are you reading?
Yeah. Oh, we read this in 10th grade. So she's equivocating on the word love, and so Gawain, to get out of it, has to sort of like untangle the equivocation and say like, or go to the actual real definition of charity. He's like, oh, let me tell you about charity.
Is that what he does? He talks. Yeah. So he does literally teach.
And then he sort of very humbly says, you probably know more about love than I do, and he kind of humbly brings it back to her. But she's sort of using equivocation. We also had a student in class this week do a real big equivocation on the word love in class, because we were talking about Romeo and Juliet, and we were clearly talking about eros. We were clearly talking about like the erotic love between Romeo and Juliet, the one that some students think is adorable and other students think is problematic. And we were talking about this.
Wait, just in general or in that book specifically?
In that book specifically.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's some.
Man and woman, gross. I thought by 10th grade they would have
By 10th grade, they're out of that. But so then the student said, well, it's a good thing that Romeo and Juliet are in love because God is love. And so what they're doing together is kind of like what God is. And then everyone was sort of like, wait a minute, there's something wrong here. And then one student said, I think you're equivocating on the word love.
That's
he
cool.
actually said it.
Said that?
What?
Then,
Which student? Extra
I'm all right.
point.
No,
Oh, yeah,
I'm
don't
gonna
put it
tell
on.
you
Yeah,
this.
sorry. Just kidding.
And then I think you're equivocating on the word love. And then this student began to explain that God's love is different. God's love is not eros, and the way that we relate to God is not erotic love. And some students were like, "Yup," and then the other student, she was like, "Oh, you're right."
Really?
And
Just
then
like
let's move
accepted
on.
it just
Yeah,
like that?
just
That's
like
cool.
that makes sense. And then we moved
Well,
on.
that's-
Yeah,
that's
so it was
good.
good.
Yeah.
And so that's an example of like falling into a logical fallacy, not because you are a supervillain and you're trying to like move hearts and minds to the glory of yourself or whatever. But it's just these are pits that you can accidentally fall into because they have the trappings of logic. But there's just that one little thing. So equivocation.
Right.
Yeah.
The next one we're going to talk about is Amphibole, Amphiboly, and it's a fallacy where the sentence or the argument is worded in such a way that it's confusing. And there have been instances of this where judges will give their ruling in a confusing way so as to avoid some sort of bad punishment. I don't think this was in the US. I think it was, I don't remember where I saw this, but they were afraid of repercussions for either getting this guy off or putting him in jail, right? The two sides were really vehement, and so they just worded it such that it couldn't be understood. And I've seen one example in real life, so I'm going to give you the non-real life
So
example.
this is the grad student essay fallacy, right? It's just such like convoluted, jargony language that no one can make heads or tails of it, and it comes across as being like intelligible.
Not total nonsense, but that it's something that can be taken in more than one way. For example, tuna biting off Washington coast as a headline. It can mean that the fishing is awesome. The tuna are biting off Washington coast. That there has been a tuna biting off Washington coast.
We got to stay away from there.
Yes, some guy got his whole leg bitten off by some voracious tuna.
Tuna biting.
Or there is one enormously huge mutant tuna that is literally biting off Washington coast.
Tuna biting off
Washington coast, right? And so that's one example. I saw one in real life that, I kid you not, this is exactly how it was worded. Doctor Who aided raid in jail. So either Doctor Who aided aided a raid that took place in a jail,
Right.
or he aided a raid from jail, or the
there's a
doctor
doctor
that aided the raid is now in jail, or a doctor aided a raid that took place in a jail. It can be taken a gazillion different ways, and that was an actual headline that one of my students brought in and was like, I think this is what you mean. And I was like, yes, that is one of the most confusing headlines I have ever seen.
I mean, Doctor Who's going through some hard times.
Yeah.
Yeah, Doctor Who is rough. And it took me a good several minutes to figure it out, and then I actually had to read the article to figure out what exactly it meant. Doctor Who was not involved.
Yeah.
It was
So
just
think-
a doctor that had helped out the FBI was now being
In jail.
incarcerated.
Bummer.
So yeah, it's ambiguous, so you can't understand what they're saying.
So it still counts as a fallacy even if it's unintentional. So like that.
Yes, these are where the other ones are fallacies of distraction because maybe you think something's important when it's not, or you want to distract from something you don't really want to answer. These are fallacies of purposeful obfuscation or just idiocy. Right? I'm doing it wrong, or I'm
you don't
doing
know.
it wrong on purpose so that people can't understand me. Okay. The next one we're going to go to is accent.
This is my absolute favorite.
I love this one. I think this happens most often with students when they are trying to get out of trouble, or when you are trying to give partial truths. For the example they use in...
Well, define it first. What is accent?
Oh, sorry. Accent is a fallacy of ambiguity that sneakily changes the sense of a sentence by means of where the emphasis is placed.
Okay.
So you will only usually see this either if they use italics, but even then it's not there. It's usually only spoken. Right? For example, the sentence, "We should not steal our neighbor's car," depending on what word you emphasize, can be taken a bunch of different ways.
Whole sentence can be changed by emphasizing each individual word differently.
Yeah, we should not steal our neighbor's car. It means somebody else should.
Right.
We shouldn't steal our neighbor's car.
Oh, but
means
we're gonna.
anyway.
We're going to, yeah.
We shouldn't steal our neighbor's car. It means maybe we're going to egg it or light it on fire.
Yeah.
We shouldn't steal our neighbor's car. It means we're stealing someone else's. We shouldn't steal our neighbor's car. It means we're stealing
Your mom's.
Yeah, your mom's.
Yeah.
We shouldn't steal our neighbor's car means we should just steal their kids, right, instead of their car. So that's one example where you, by emphasizing a different word, you can change the whole meaning of what you're saying. And kids do this when they're trying to get out of trouble. So say 4 students came in and tipped over my bookcase and piled up all the books and lit them on fire and then walked out.
Yeah.
Well, I catch one of the kids and
bring
I
him
say,
in.
"Did you light my books on fire?" And he said, I didn't light the books on fire. It means he was there and he was tipping the books, right? He was definitely involved, but he wasn't the one that physically lit the match.
Yeah.
Or even if he was, it could mean that he's like, I'm not physically the fire, right? I didn't light them on fire. I'm not fire. And that's the way he's trying to dodge it, right? So you hear this from students trying to get out of trouble all the time.
Yeah.
I didn't cheat. I just provided the answers to someone else who was.
They
right?
cheated.
They cheated. I didn't cheat. Or I yeah, I lied or something. You know, they're just kind of screwing with things.
Yeah.
All right, so that's accent. It's one of my favorites. Watch out for it with kids. They'll pop that accent on a word and change everything. The next one is loaded question, and this one is all over the place. We saw it in the presidential fallacy bingo
Yep.
we played just
On
this week.
Thursday, yeah.
And it's where a question is asked in such a way that there are only a couple of outcomes, and both of them are bad. Like the question, when did you stop beating your wife? If you say, I haven't, then you still are beating your wife.
jerk.
And if you say like Thursday, then you were beating them before, right? You can do it to students. When did you stop cheating on my tests? Or I saw one interview with a woman and the guy says, are you aware that you're insane? And if she says no, then she's nuts
Still
and she has
insane.
no idea. And
Yeah.
if she says, yeah, she's like, I'm crazy and I'm embracing it, right? So
Were there any good examples from the debate?
Yes, the one from the debate was Romney was continuously asking Obama, when did you cut the funding to something?
how much,
Or how much
he
did
cut
you
the
cut,
funding
how much
to
did you
coal
cut,
drilling?
Yeah,
I
how
think
much
it
did you
was?
cut the funding to coal drilling?
Coal drilling, coal digging, coal mining.
Coal mining,
They
there you
drill
go.
for oil. They mine,
They
for,
mine
coal.
for coal.
Got it.
And he kept asking the question of how much did you cut it by? And the real answer was that, well, I don't even think Obama gave the real answer.
He said we cut the permits that weren't being
That's
used
right.
in order to issue permits to companies that would actually use them. And so even though we cut the permits, we did increase the overall output of coal. So it was a good argument, and Obama actually did what you should do when facing one of these questions, and that's identify that it's a loaded question meant to trap you and dodge it by identifying the third option or just not answering it the way that they ask, which is what he did. He said, here's what we actually did, and then outlined the story.
Because if you answer it saying like, well, I didn't cut coal mining, be like, aha, you love coal. And if you say, well, we cut it by 40%, be like, you just killed 40% of coal mining jobs.
Yeah.
Exactly. So when the argument was a tertiary thing, something that was not what the question was being asked, it's a loaded question. And so to get out of it, you need to like realize that these aren't the only two options. And then the question is being posed in a way that is trapping. And this is often one that you can also fall into as a questioner, not because you're an evil genius, but just because you're not.
You're
thinking
asking
clearly.
questions.
You're just
All
asking
right.
questions.
And we have to train our students in thesis to recognize the questions and dodge them appropriately.
Yep.
Is this the one you were talking about for when you're a judge, Graham?
It is not. I do the either or fallacy.
Either later.
That
Okay,
comes
never
later.
mind.
So the next one is called No
Oh,
True Scotsman.
so good.
And it's a fallacy of ambiguity that eliminates an exception to a presupposed generalization by dismissing the exception without justification. So the logic behind this is that if I put forward a rule, a generalization, like all of this kind of person is nerdy or smelly or something, and then someone points out an exception, that's a contradiction and it should disprove my statement. But people will often try to get out of that disproval by saying, well, that's not a real exception. An example would be saying everyone who plays Minecraft is an ugly nerd, right?
Yeah.
And then somebody brings forth this model who is gorgeous.
It's like
and
young
is-
Adonis. He's like,
Yeah.
I enjoyed the Minecraft.
and he's like, I also enjoy yachting and good conversation. And he's wonderful in every possible way.
Yeah.
And they're like, that's not a real Minecraft
You're not a
player.
real Minecraft player.
Right? He's not a real Scotsman. Exactly that
We
kind
see
of
this
thing.
in the school where people will say everybody at Veritas just is like completely wrapped up in caring about Latin or grades, and then someone will be like, that guy doesn't care about grades at all. Well, he's not a real Veritas student, right? And so it can be a cruel fallacy. These all can be cruel, but
Do you know why it's called No True Scotsman?
yeah, it's because it was. I think it came from the British saying like all Scotsmen are crazy, like crazy bumpkins who fight naked, and then be like, well, look at this really educated, well-mannered Scotsman. Be like, well, that guy's not really Scottish. He's not a true Scotsman. It can also be done when you are doing it for your own group identity.
You're not a real skater.
Yeah,
Get out of here, man.
You're a poser. Get out of here, poser. And be like, well, I have a skateboard, and
I'm
I come
actually
to the
good at
skate park,
tricks.
and I come here every Saturday, and I skate. And be like, yeah, but you're not like a real,
You're not
real
one of us.
skater.
Yeah.
And there's no reason for the exception. It's just being a jerk.
Wouldn't that be exception without a special pleading? Exception without a reason?
That's what I was trying to, because we did one.
Wouldn't that be special pleading?
But this is dismissing the exception
Because the other
without
one was
justification.
wasn't the other one asking for an exception for no reason?
okay.
Yeah,
and then
and
this
this
one
one's
is getting
dismissing
rid
it.
of it
Right.
for no reason.
All right, moving on to fallacies of form. This is the form
So
of
we're
the
done with
argument.
ambiguity.
Done with ambiguity. Moving on to fallacies
Thank
of
goodness.
form.
That's just
Fixed it.
confusing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We fixed all ambiguity.
This one is a fallacy of form that assumes what is to be proven. It's called circular reasoning. You've probably heard of it, circular logic. It's where I
Begging the
assume
question.
the conclusion in the premise. So he says he loves me, and he wouldn't lie to someone that he loves, would he? Well, you're sort of assuming that he loves you, and the
Right.
premise to prove that he loves you, that's circular logic. And the problem here, I think the most interesting thing about this one is that begging the question is actually, this is what begging the question means.
Right.
It means that you are begging the premises or begging the conclusion in the premises. And that phrase has shifted meaning now linguistically to mean raises the question.
Yeah.
So people will say, well, that begs the question, blah, blah, blah. Well, no, it doesn't.
Should we go to war?
Yeah, that begs the question, what was he really doing in that hall? You know, that sort of thing. And you know what? As not a prescriptivist, like I'm cool with
you
language
really?
changing.
Oh, I
I'm
don't like
not.
that.
I'm not a prescriptivist.
Yeah.
I'm okay
So
with
it doesn't bug you that
No, it doesn't.
it changed meaning?
It
Yeah.
changes big whoop. And I think you just have to be aware of when it's being used in one sense and when it's
Yeah.
being used in the other, so that you don't look like an idiot when someone is talking about circular reasoning and you think they're meaning it's raising the question.
Yeah. So then you need to know the definition of it. So if someone's begging the question, you say, well, you're actually begging the question. They have no idea what you're talking about. They're like, I didn't raise any questions. Then now you're in the fallacy of ambiguity.
Well, now that person is just confused.
Yeah, now
and you
the
just need to sort of dumb it down. I
So
don't know
yeah,
if
so
that's your
circular
fault.
reasoning, yes, he wouldn't lie to somebody he loves.
The next,
The logical fallacies of love.
Is there a whole section for those?
I'm sure there
probably
are.
should be.
The next two are causation fallacies. And I'm going to kind of bundle them together because they both are fallacies where you assume cause without showing any actual link between the two things. The first one is post hoc ergo propter hoc, which means after this, therefore because of this in Latin. So I see one thing happen, and then a little later I see another thing happen, and so I assume that the first thing caused the second. So this is where a lot of superstition comes from. This morning, a black cat crossed my path, and then my girlfriend broke up with me. Just my luck, stupid black cat. When really you might have just been a terrible boyfriend.
Right.
Or she met that Adonis that loves playing Minecraft. And
Yeah, that kid.
He's
great.
fantastic.
He
Yeah.
built her
I
an
love that guy.
entire entire Taj Mahal
Wow.
in Minecraft.
And then a real pagoda in her backyard. He's also a craftsman. He
Yes.
works with his hands. He's
What a guy.
just he's
What a
good. He's
guy.
great. So that's post hoc ergo propter hoc. It's where a lot of superstition comes from. See one thing and then later another thing happens.
And then you say that they are
They
related.
are therefore clearly linked. The next one, cum hoc ergo propter hoc, is a fallacy where you falsely, because two things are correlated, you link the two. And I've seen this even in some classical school promotion literature where it shows on one axis time spent with parents and then on another axis grades. And so they assume that just because a kid
time
is
with-
spending more time with their parents, their grades will therefore improve, when really I think the cause is probably just wealth and
Or
prosperity.
it can be any sort of cause, right? Like just because they're correlated on the graph doesn't mean that it's describing
causation.
the causation.
Right. I think the correlation is probably because they're a wealthy family, right? If the parents are wealthy, they might have more times to spend with the kids. They're not working 3 jobs, and also that kid probably goes to a better school, has more time to spend on homework, and isn't worrying about getting beat up all the time. And so the both of those things correlate because they both are being caused by social status, not necessarily by something else.
So this is the one that we see confuse students a lot.
Because people abuse graphs
Because
and do
people
this on
abuse
purpose.
graphs all the time. So we have a great website that's called Spurious Correlations that
yeah.
correlates things together that have no business being correlated. Like the number of Nicolas Cage movies perfectly correlates to like people being strangled to death by their bed sheets in a given year. And
One
so
of them is like Age of Miss America and deaths by hot steam and objects.
that may be correlated.
Like the younger she is, the more people die by steam. And
But the graphs are correlated, right? Like when it rises in 2014, the other one rises in 2014. It's gone down. So the statistician has found these things that obviously don't correlate,
Right.
But has shown
or obviously don't cause
or
each
obviously
other.
that don't cause, but he's shown how they correlate, and people will be like, "Oh my goodness, like what's happening with steam in Miss America?" It's
We got to keep their ages up. People are
gotta-
going to die.
Sorry,
So,
the
yeah,
number
so-
of Nicolas Cage movies is inversely correlated with helicopter accidents.
Yeah, so there you go.
So more Nicolas Cage movies and fewer accidents.
Fewer
Yeah,
accidents.
so
that's
the
right. Yeah.
I knew he was good for something.
Something. Yeah.
He's on there. So the students, but then students can get so nervous about this that they also don't know when things actually cause with correlation. And the answer is you just need way more data, and then also have the explanation for how these things would actually correlate. They can be, there's probability, it can be a probable correlation, causation relationship.
This just feels like it'd be a super modern thing, but this idea has existed for a long time.
Yeah.
So it hasn't been called. It probably wasn't called correlation.
It has a
versus-
fancy Latin name, Thomas.
Yeah. That's cool. I'm just thinking as we go through all these that like these logical fallacies have existed for a long time, and it's not like we've suddenly invented all these things. There are fancy psychological terms for most of these, but I prefer the Latin ones because what's the chronological snobbery
Because
one?
that's exactly what it is.
That's what I
Well, that one is
Yeah.
actually might be a little more. That's one that C.S. Lewis talks about a lot. That one
Really?
and Bulverism. That's the one. I was blanking on the name for a
kinda
second.
mumbled.
But those are two that come from
Barbarism.
primarily C.S. Lewis, and
Yeah.
I'm not sure I've seen them in any other logic books that really reference them. But they are fallacies in their own right. Cool.
So, fun fact, Hannenberg and I had this one idea back in the day that we were going to help students memorize them, we were going to make logical fallacy finger puppets as little animals. So, post hoc ergo propter hoc was going to be a little hawk. And amphibole was going to be a little frog, a little amphibian.
Tu Quoque was going to be a little duck named Tu Quackwe.
And he would just come around and be like, "Tu quack, 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 quack." And he would quack
You
at
do
you.
it too. You do it too.
You do it too. You do it too.
Whatever happened to this idea?
Those are like, we could only figure out 4 or 5. And
I was like, what do we do with an elephant?
yeah, we couldn't figure one.
So we just sort of bagged it.
Yeah.
We had one for a duck and one for a hawk, and that was about as far
But
as
now
we got.
all I think about with Tu Quoque is like a little duck just saying like, you do this too. And the post hoc ergo propter hoc is just a hawk that's just like correlating all these wrong things together.
He just walks around his life thinking that one thing has caused another thing, and his causation is insane. In
Well,
this
the
poor
thing
hawk's
is,
life.
the ancient Romans thought hawks were like harbingers of something. Like a hawk flies over your battlefield, you're like, yes, we're gonna win.
So do the Greeks.
And that's exactly post hoc ergo propter hoc.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
We'll put that together.
Cool. All right. Oh, thank
that's
you for
good.
that. Yeah, guys.
all connected.
This is,
The next one is called bifurcation, or
And this-
either or false. You've probably heard false dilemma or false dichotomy.
this
You're
is
probably
the one I
familiar
do
with it.
all the time.
It's a fallacy of form that illegitimately limits choices. It's where you give them 2 choices when really there are more choices. And this, Graham does it sometimes when he's asking questions for thesis.
So, Megby, either you can be on this podcast
Right.
by bringing us snacks.
Yes.
Or you can be on this podcast by bringing us snacks and $50.
Wow, I better get snacks.
You better
because those
jump
are my
on that
only
snack
2
train.
options.
Yeah, exactly.
You better bring us some snacks.
This works really well for kids.
Yeah, this is, so
You're
despite being a
babysitting.
fallacy, and you should
You
not
should
use
use
them
it.
to convince people to do things.
should
Sometimes
use
using them
it.
on kids is fine, and in this case, definitely use it. There's a golden window
Yeah.
where this works, and then eventually they figure it
They'll
out.
hit the logic stage and they'll be like, wait a gosh darn minute. And then they realize that you're pulling a fast one on them. But when they're real young, you can say, okay, either you go to bed with a snack now. No, either you go to bed right now
with no snack.
no snack, or you go to bed in 5 minutes with a snack. And then the kids will be like, snack,
Wow,
snack, snack,
snack,
snack,
yeah,
snack.
And they feel as though they've made a choice and they're in control of their destiny, when really you got them to bed in 5 minutes and you fed them like you were supposed to.
Yep. And so off they go, happy little campers, going to bed and be like, I chose this, and fall asleep.
Remember, this is coming from
3 people with
three
no kids.
people with no
With
kids.
no children.
I bet.
Yeah.
So we have no idea if this works.
The
or not.
effectiveness is still suspect, but I've told it to some of our students who do babysit, and they say it works. There's a golden window where the kids make the choice, and they're like, "I made this choice. I feel really good about my agency."
And then, but
Is
then
that
logic
how they
sta-
talk?
Yeah, that's how children talk. And then the logic
My
stage
understanding
hits,
of how kids talk.
and then the logic stage hits, and the kids realize they start putting this together, and they realize like, wait a minute, there are more options in this world. Or I could continue shooting you with a Nerf gun. You know,
And I've told students that, when the parents say you can either get your phone taken away or do your homework, I was like, look, there are more options. You could burn the house down. You could punch your mom in the face. You could run away from home. You could decide to become sheriff of the town and run for sheriff. Like there's all kinds of things you can do with your life. And apparently one of them went home.
Actually did that?
And did that. Their mom was like, you can do your homework, go to bed. And they're like, I could also burn the house down. And mom was like, go to bed. It's like, you made your choice.
Hannenberg.
Yeah, drat. So sometimes I hear from parents after teaching these that their kids come home and they're like, Mom, that's a fallacy, because parents use ad baculum all the time, right? Do this or you'll be punished. And they're like,
the threat.
Why should I clean my room, Mom? Because if you don't, you'll be punished. And they're like, that's not a logical reason. That's ad baculum. And the parents are like,
That's an appeal to fear, and I'm not scared.
yeah. They'll be like, well, here comes the
But you
punishment.
should be.
Yeah.
That's the problem is parents actually do have the power to make this
that.
happen. The next one is slippery slope. And it's a fallacy of form that asserts but does not demonstrate a connection between a proposed idea and a resulting series of bad consequences. Also, the bald denial that some clearly treacherous and dangerous step will lead to any negative consequences at all. So I think the best way I can explain this is with those DirecTV commercials where it's like, if you do this, this will happen. And then if you do this, this will happen. If you do this, this will happen. And you haven't necessarily demonstrated the causal link between all of those, or you say that this one horrible thing will happen if we take this step, but you haven't necessarily proven that, right? That's slippery slope.
Students do this all the time when they're talking about one test grade, right? Well, I got a B on this test, and if I get a B on this test, I'm going to get a B in this class. If I get a B in this class, I'm going to get into a crappy college. If I get into a crappy college, I'm going to not get a good job. If I don't get a good job, I'm going to live under a bridge. Mr. Donaldson, you just gave me a B and doomed me to living under a bridge.
Yeah.
And then I remind them that I do not give grades, they earn grades.
Good.
Oh,
Wow, that's a good one.
you earned your bridge. Now you got to live under it.
You had this happen in the Great Books class. Someone, this was a couple weeks ago, so I don't remember the details, but someone said that an argument was a slippery slope, and your response was, "Let's explore the slope." I thought that was a good answer. Of like,
Did I?
yeah,
Man, sometimes I'm good at stuff.
Yeah.
I don't remember this at all.
like,
I have no recollection.
The person's response was like, "Okay, so if you believe this, then it leads to all these bad consequences." And then your question was, "Well, let's look at like each step of that instead of just assuming the whole slope is there no matter
And the
what."
thing is, the slope could be real. Like it
Could be.
Those bad consequences could actually be bad consequences. So in our debate, they were talking about cutting taxes and then the repercussions that cutting taxes could have. If you cut taxes, this could happen, this could happen, this could happen. And the kids were like, "That's slippery slope. That's just a logical fallacy." And it's like, okay, for it to be a logical fallacy, we need to go look at every assertion and see if, in fact, those assertions are unsupported conclusions or improbable conclusions. You're building this whole thing off of improbable conclusions. This is kind of also, we see the slippery slope with those ancient aliens, because with like these pyramids, could they be satellite dishes? And since they're satellite dishes, who are they communicating? And since they're
It's
communicating
like a slippery
aliens,
slope of other fallacies
it's like,
put
yeah,
together.
Yeah, exactly. It's good.
It's real impressive.
It's a
you guys,
masterclass.
it's a masterclass in logical fallacies. Just go watch it. It's
Untangling that mess is just
I'm still
that
mad
should be our logic.
It's on
course.
History Channel. I'm so mad
awesome. At one
this.
point, they
man.
claim that the gods in the Iliad could have been aliens, which
And since they were aliens,
since
they were aliens,
oh, it's
yeah.
great. That's my favorite. Okay, we got one more, and it's a priorism or hasty generalization. You draw a conclusion based on a too small sample size. This is where racism comes from. You meet one guy that's bad news, and you assume that his whole group is bad news. Or
This is where bad contracts in sports come from. Some kid's got a great season as a hockey player, and then all of a sudden, like, he gets a huge contract, but he just wasn't that good. It was just an outlier season, one sample size.
or maybe everybody else in the competition was kind of poopy that year, and
Yeah.
so he shined even though he was relatively average. That's hasty generalization. You're making, or you have one dish at this restaurant and say that the
amazing.
restaurant is the best restaurant you've ever been to in your life. That's hasty
When
generalization.
really, the rest of the dishes were like foot pasta. And
Foot pasta?
yeah, I don't know.
is that a Canadian expression?
No, I have no idea. I'm
Yeah,
just
is
thinking-
that what you guys eat up there?
All that
Foot pasta
and
and
poutine.
you have John's?
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, it's my favorite.
Anyway, so hasty
crazy money.
generalization.
Yeah, that draws these to a close. That's all of the fallacies we were
So,
gonna talk
Hamburg,
about.
I have a question just to close this out. Do you think that it is, maybe and for both of you guys, do you think that it is a worthwhile experiment to like really actually commit these things to memory and be able to whip it out in conversation and say like, oh, that's slippery slope? Or because I feel like one of the problems with teaching logical fallacies is that the students can, or just people in general, can kind of become snarky know-it-alls. But they're right when they're talking about a logical fallacy, but just pointing out a logical fallacy doesn't solve the problem at hand.
Right.
I think the trick, I absolutely think committing them to memory is important. Not necessarily their names. You don't have to know the Latin names for everything, but you need to know how all of these work so you can identify when they're being used on you, when you're being trapped with a question, or when you're given only 2 or 3 options when there are far more. But I think simply pointing it out as a fallacy makes you look like a bit of a dip, and you should rather identify it and then tactfully address the situation and say, well, that's not entirely true because you're changing the definition of this particular word. So let's set a definition together and then move from there, right? You have to be tactful always and be gracious and be humble, and I think that those should permeate all discussions. but that these tools, you don't have, just because you have them doesn't mean you have to abuse them and look like a jerk.
Yeah, I like the way that you point. Like the end of it is discussion with someone else. So like the way our school is structured is that it goes grammar school to school of logic to school of rhetoric. So the end of all of this knowledge that they learn is that they would be able to speak well at the end of that. And so yeah, they should know these things. They shouldn't be jerks about them. But being a jerk about it would be speaking poorly about it.
Yeah.
Does that make- like
Yeah.
yeah.
Just like you can, if you know anything, you can abuse
Yes.
it. You can get a big head and you can sort of wag that knowledge around in any conversation.
So, listener, we have just armed you with a great tool, the tool of logical fallacies. Now you have the choice as to whether you're going to use that for evil or whether you're going to use that for good. And like with all education, we have just increased your potential for good or evil. No, it's true.
It is true.
The
C.S.
reason
Lewis
why
said that education was dangerous because we could be making clever devils.
that's right. The reason why Satan in Paradise Lost fell so far is because he was the greatest, and he had so much so further to fall, and he could be so much more terrible because of all the potential that he had for good. And I think about that a lot when we're teaching students.
I think about that because how great I am.
How wonderful I am.
How
and
far I
far
can fall.
I can fall. No, I think about that a lot because on the one hand, we are giving them all of these things, but yes, you could be creating these clever devils, people that if they do not have the virtue, if they don't care about virtue, then they're going off and they can be using this for evil. And this is what Plato argued against the sophists for, is that they were not men of virtue. They were using these tricks to be able to get ahead. And that is condemnable. So
I guess it's kind of convenient that the next topic is going to be the 7 virtues.
Sure.
Yeah, so
right.
this is going to flow together really well.
Well, thank you so much for listening to Classical Stuff You Should Know podcast. You can check out our new website, classicalstuff.net. You can listen to all the old episodes, and we're also on iTunes. You can RSS feed the whole kit and caboodle. And
If you have requests,
please email us at classicalstuff@veritasacademy.net. We will reply. We will thank you for your listenership. And if you have requests, we'll put them on a list and we'll get researching and get learning and bring you some cool new classical stuff that you should know. Thanks for listening.
Bye.